This conference will now be recorded.
Okay,
Uh,
good afternoon, all the participants.
just 1 minute,
The
ma'am.
topic is,
Just one. Good afternoon, one and all. We are going to start today's second session. Uh, Today we have Dr. Subhalata Sinha ma'am with us. Already she has taken one session on first day. So that today she is taking session on emission norms and judging appropriate diesel filters. So welcome, ma'am. Welcome all the participants. So please, ma'am, you can start today's session. So over to you, ma'am.
thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, all the participants. The topic is energy emission norms and judging appropriate diesel filters. So this topic is really the demand of the current era because we are actually depending on the diesel fuel. So why it is getting stuck, sir? Yeah. So this is actually the very burning topic. So I'm covering under this lecture control of CIM engine emissions, then emission control by engine variables and exhaust gas recirculation, emission standards, diesel particulate filter, continuously regenerating trap, and advancement in engine emission technology. So these points will be covered here. So before this, I just I'll just present overview of control of CI engine emissions. So for engine emission control in CI engines, this is actually called the diesel engines also. And these points are very important that CI engine emits pollutants in the form of all the three states in the solid, liquid, and the gas. So in the solid form, you will find soot. In the liquid form, you will find polyaromatic hydrocarbons, fuel, and oil components, sulfur acids, etc. And in the gaseous form, you will find carbon monoxide, hydrocarbons, and nitrogen oxides. NOx I am writing because there may be the chances it will be nitric oxide, it may be nitrogen peroxide, and here a total 7 oxides are there, but out of 7 oxides, 2 are very unstable and 5 oxides are available. Out of 5, only 2 oxides are actually responsible for the pollution, that is nitric oxide and nitrogen peroxide, NO and NO2. Now, emissions of nitrogen oxides and particulate matter are diesel engines are of main concern. This regulations do have limits for CO and SC as well for the CI engine, but the concentration of these emissions is very small, and these have been relatively easy to control through the improved fuel system design. Now, the NOx PM trade-off governs selection and optimization of many engine design variables. For example, injection timing, injection pressure, boost pressure, etc. A change in some engine variables may although causes reduction in non-NOx, but increases PM and vice versa. And engine design changes to reduce NOx emissions many a time result also in higher brake specific fuel consumption, and this is important as the emissions of the greenhouse gas CO2 are also to be reduced. So these are the pollutants to be considered. So from the diesel, our effort is basically to control NOx and PM. Other things are just in the modern engine, it is controlled. Now coming to the CI engine mixture formation and combustion both are heterogeneous and complex in nature. It is governed by mixture formation, which depend on interactions between the injection spray, air motion, and combustion chamber geometry. This is very important, injection spray. I will be discussing in the further slides about the injection pressure, etc. Air motion is also important, whether it is swirl or squeeze, etc. Injection spray formation, precise control of fuel injection process is necessary for the formation of the desired spray and fuel atomization. Combustion chamber type, the indirect injection or direct injection is important because indirect injection engines are being phased out for production due to their poor fuel efficiency, and the intake boost pressure is there. especially when you are doing turbocharging with variable boost pressure, it is coupled with EGR, results in substantial reductions in both the NOx and PM. Exhaust after treatment such as diesel particulate filter, that is DPF, diesel oxidation catalyst DOC, and selective catalytic reduction SCR of NOx, etc. all are already in use. An overview of various technologies and the direction of research and development which have been pursued to control NOx and PM emissions from CI engines are presented in next slide. Now, this is the overview of NOx reduction techniques in CI engine. You can do in cylinder also, in cylinder reduction, or you can do after exhaust, means after treatment also. So in cylinder, you can go with the combustion system optimization, injection system optimization, and variable geometry turbocharging, and EGR also, exhaust gas recirculation. But in after treatment, you need to use catalytic converter. For catalytic converter, you can use selective catalytic reduction or NOx storage reduction. These methods are already available for NOx control. Now, coming to the particulate matter reduction technique in CI engine, you can see that the PM control can be done by reduction of insoluble particulate matter and reduction of soluble organic fraction. Here, for reduction of soluble PM, that is, you need to control the sulfate, you need to control the soot. Sulfate will be controlled by controlling sulfur in the fuel, and soot will be just, you have to do improvement of diffusion combustion, and this can be done by either optimization of in-cylinder air motion or optimization of injection rate, shape, and timing. And this optimization of in-cylinder air motion includes the optimization of combustion chamber shape, and this PM emission can also be controlled by using the advanced technology, that is diesel particulate factor DPF, and continuously regenerative traps, that is CRT. As far as the reduction of SOF is concerned, reduction of oil SOF is required, and it is done by reduction of lubricating oil consumption and reduction of conversion of oil to SOF. And reduction of fuel SOF will be done by the oxidation catalyst. Now, we'll be discussing the emission control of engine variables and EGR. Engine variables we will be considering the most important as the injection pressure, and after that we'll discuss about EGR. Now, to achieve low soot formation, rates of fuel air mixing are to be enhanced. Fuel injection and air motion in the cylinder are key parameters to achieve rapid fuel air mixing, and the following strategy is adopted. These are the strategies are adopted to improve fuel air mixing and the diesel engine combustion, which leads to reduction both in the soot and the NOx formation. Now, first is the use of high fuel injection pressure and small hole to produce very fine fuel atomization for rapid fuel evaporation and mixing with air. Fuel spray not to impinge on walls, but fuel to be distributed mainly within the air inside the combustion chamber. Now, matching the injection spray configuration and development within cylinder, air motion for rapid fuel air mixing throughout the injection duration period, use of variable injection timing, multiple injection, and injection rate shaping technology is also important. Now, this you can see the beneficial effects of high injection pressure. When the pressure will become high, you will find that it is improved fuel producing finer fuel droplets. The smaller fuel droplets evaporate at a faster rate, resulting in rapid fuel air mixing. A shorter injection duration you will find, and with shorter injection duration, what will happen that the injection timing may be retarded, and fuel may now be injected closer to TDC in hotter air, giving shorter ignition delay, resulting in an emission benefits. And higher spray penetration and better air utilization will be the result of that. Now, this picture shows the effect of peak injection pressure on PM NOx trade-off for a turbocharged intercooled DI direct injection diesel engine. Now, here you can see when the pressure is injection pressure is 1000 bar. In that case, the particulate emission is coming about 0.37 or 38 in this range. But as the pressure increases, it drops. You can see this. So here, basically the particulates are getting oxidized, so because of that the concentration is reducing. Now, coming to the next, that is injection rate shaping and multiple injection. NOx formation is influenced by duration of ignition delay, amount of fuel injected during delay period, and the rate of mixture preparation with the inside the combustion chamber. So the shape of ideal rate of injection curve during ignition delay and the main injection period depends on engine load and speed. These two parameters are important, load and speed. So general principles of fuel injection scheduling are: the rate of fuel injection within the delay period must be kept small to reduce the amount of fuel burned during pre-mixed combustion phase, and during the main injection period, rate of injection should be increased steeply to inject fuel within a short period when the temperature and pressure in the combustion chamber are high for rapid combustion of the injected fuel. Now, you can see that the injection rate shaping and multiple injection, how it plays a vital role. The pilot injection is a form of multiple injection and with two injection pulses. In the pilot injection, a small quantity of fuel, about 10% of fuel per cycle, is injected 3 to 10 degree of tank angle degree before the main injection event. This is the main injection event. And the pilot injected fuel has more time to undergo pre-combustion reactions. When the main fuel injection is made, the combustion begins soon after, resulting in a short delay period. This is the short delay period. And as the pilot fuel quantity injected during delay period is rather small, the peak rate of combustion pressure rise and peak pressure are reduced. This one. So when this is actually the typical pilot injection strategy, and the cylinder pressure are shown here. This with the crank angle. So we are getting this here the cylinder pressure less, because we are actually bifurcating the injection. The small injection, sorry. First we are doing the a small quantity of fuel we are injecting, and then we are injecting the remaining part of the injection process. So here in that case, cylinder pressure will drop down. So this will drop down little bit. So this will actually controls the emission rate. Now coming to the injection rate shaping and multiple injection, you can see with pilot injection, the injection timing of main fuel can be retarded to give low NOx emissions without adversely affecting the engine power and fuel efficiency. So the pilot injection, less fuel burns as pre-mixed, and a larger fraction of fuel burns in diffusion combustion mode. There are two modes. When you are injecting less fuel, it is actually the pre-mixed, and the larger fraction burns in the diffusion combustion mode. So in the normal engine, NOx reduction is obtained by retarding the injection timing, which results in higher smoke and PM emissions. So and higher BSFC also. Results with pilot injection and conventional engine with retarded injection are compared in this table. You can see at the same NOx emission level of 5.5 gram per kilowatt hour with pilot injection, typically 23% lower PM and 50% lower HC and 4% lower BSFC were obtained. Here, this is the conventional engine and this is the pilot injection. So with this little changes in the way of injecting fuel, you can reduce these emissions. Now coming to the electronic fuel injection system, that is EFI. So electronically controlled fuel injection system have the capability to fulfill the ideal injection rate requirement, and this electronic fuel injection also are capable of providing multiple injection. Electronically controlled diesel engine injection systems have the many advantages over the mechanically controlled injection system. It gives the very high injection pressure exceeding 2000 bar, precise control of injection timing, then the precise fuel metering to control power output and limit smoke, extremely low cylinder to cylinder variation in the quantity of fuel injected, and injection rate shaping with controlled initial rate of injection to reduce noise and emissions, sharp end of injection to eliminate nozzle dribble, prevent nozzle falling, and reduce smoke and hydrocarbon emissions, injection rate shaping for controlling heat release rates during mixed and diffusion combustion phases for controlling smoke and NOx formation. And electronically controlled unit injectors, distributor pumps, and common rail injection systems are normally in use. Now you can see this is the electronic fuel injection system. It is the injector. This is the high pressure solenoid valve, and this injection plunger is being operated by the cam, and this is the nozzle. This gives the actually injection pressure of about more than 2000 bar. Now coming to the common rail diesel injection CRDI system. In the common rail system, the high fuel pressure is generated by a common pump. Here you can see the common pump that is separate from the injector, and the fuel pressure is independent of engine speed and load. The typical layout of the common rail system is shown here, and The CRDI has 4 main components. One is the high pressure pump, high pressure distribution rail, and the injectors. These are the injectors, and the electronic engine control unit. So the mechanical pump raises the fuel pressure and feeds the common rail with fuel at high pressure. The common rail is connected to the injectors, and from here it is injecting the fuel. So the solenoid valve in each injector controls the injection timing and quantity. That is very important. After that, we'll be talking about the next important method to control NOx, that is the exhaust gas recirculation. For the exhaust gas recirculation, this method was actually used for SI engine, not for CI engine. They started for SI engine in 1970s to reduce NOx emission. But in during 1990s, what happened? The emission standards for the diesel cars were in the Europe were tightened, and they made the very stringent value to control it. So after that, they decided to use the same technology for the CI engine. So they started this EGR, and they used for NOx reduction. So as the EGR is applied, excess air decreases. Because what is happening that we are taking the part of the exhaust and mixing it with the inlet air, and then the process was started. So with 25% EGR in a turbocharged engine at full load operation, the excess air ratio decreased from around 1.7 to 1.3, and simultaneously with 25% EGR, the NOx reduced by 85%, smoke increased manifold from about 0.5 BOS smoke units to 3.5 BOS units, and BSFC increased by 8%. Smoke and BSFC increased sharply beyond about 12% EGR rate. Now, but at part load, what is happening when air fuel ratios are high, EGR rates even up to 50% can be applied. In practice, in the production engines, EGR is applied at a part loads, and at high loads, NOx control is obtained by retarding injection timing. So a typical EGR map for a passenger car diesel engine is shown in this figure. This figure gives you the complete map, what EGR rate should be kept for what load, because on one axis I am showing engine load, and this side engine speed, and the third side EGR. When you have the load, you want 50%, and suppose speed 2000 point, then you just check it how much EGR is to be taken, 10%, 20%, 30%, like that. So this map is available, and you can use this. EGR rates are varied with engine load and speed, and an electronic control of EGR is usually employed. So in addition to input data on engine speed and load, EGR is controlled based on air mass flow rate, and this air mass flow rate is measured by a flow meter, and from airflow signal, the engine control unit determines EGR rates from a lookup table. This is the lookup table to control EGR rates, and measurement of airflow rate compensates for any changes in volumetric efficiency that may result due to deposit buildup in combustion chamber, valve timing adjustments. After that, I'm talking about the cooled versus uncooled EGR. Sometimes whatever the exhaust gas you are taking, sometimes they are sending it to intercooler to cool it, and then it is mixed with the fresh air, and sometimes they are not cooling it and directly sending there. So what will be the benefit of cooled EGR? You can see here, cooling of EGR before mixing with air has the following possible effects. Okay, so lower intake charge temperature would further reduce NOx formation. Higher intake charge density, higher volumetric efficiency, and higher oxygen content in charge would give higher flame temperature, resulting in higher oxidation of soot. A higher volumetric efficiency provides lower BSFC. Lower charge temperature would result in longer ignition delay period, more premixed combustion, and higher unburned hydrocarbon emission. So for the same reduction in NOx, loss in fuel economy is lower with cooled EGR compared to uncooled EGR. And due to a better NOx BSFC trade-off, the cooled EGR is more commonly employed in practice. So basically, you can conclude this by, if the EGR temperature is lower, then the inlet temperature will be lower. If the inlet temperature will be lower, then the cylinder peak temperature will also be lower. If the cylinder peak temperature will be lower, then the oxidation of nitrogen to NOx will get reduced. This is the fundamental behind this. Now coming to the EGR systems for turbocharged engines, two methods are used for application of EGR in turbocharged engines. The layout of the two systems I am giving you in the next slide. One is the low pressure route, another is the high pressure route. In case of low pressure route, exhaust gas from the downstream of the turbine is trapped and inducted to the intake side of the compressor. In this method, the required pressure difference across the EGR valve is easily obtained, and EGR is possible over a wide range of engine operation. The main disadvantage is that the exhaust gas along with air also passes through the compressor and intercooler, resulting in durability problems of compressor due to the presence of soot particles. But in case of high pressure route, exhaust gas from the upstream side of the turbine is trapped and led to the exit side of the compressor. So EGR gas does not pass through the intercooler or compressor. EGR is additional to the intake charge of compressor, and amount of oxygen in the charge remains constant. Now, with this method, higher combustions in NOx can be achieved with lesser increase in smoke and particulate emissions. Now, you can see the figure. This is the part A is the low pressure route. Low pressure route means you are taking the exit downward side of the turbine. Here the valve is there, and then it is going to compressor, then intercooler, and then engine. But in case of high pressure route, you are seeing we are tapping the gas from the this side, upstream side, and taking to the EGR valve, and then it is going to the this engine side. And this compressed air is going to intercooler, and then it is mixed and going to the engine side. So what is happening here in the high pressure route of EGR, sufficient pressure difference between pressure upstream of turbine and downstream of compressor is not available. Under all the engine speed load condition at high loads, the pressure at the exit of compressor may be higher than the pressure upstream of the turbine. So to introduce EGR at high engine loads, turbine back pressure is increased by use of a variable geometry turbocharger, and a venturi is fitted between the compressor and intake manifold. The EGR is introduced at the throat of the venturi. This is the way how we do with the low pressure route or high pressure route. Now, emission test procedure. This is all about what we have discussed about for the control of NOx emission. Now we'll check the emission test procedures. So the vehicle emission limits are specified based on a standard test procedure, which includes a specified vehicle driving or engine operation schedule of varying speeds and loads, which represents real life driving usage patterns of the vehicles and engines. The test schedule of vehicle or engine operation is known as driving cycle. So use of emission sampling system and analyzers that operate on the working principles is specified in the emission regulations. This you can easily find from the government agency. And the new production vehicles and the engines are tested for compliance with the emission standards in a government approved laboratory. And USA and particularly the California have led the world in developing vehicle emission test methods and in setting the vehicle emission limits. The test cycles used in the USA, Europe, and Japan for emission measurement and certification of vehicles or engines for compliance with the standards differ. And so also the numerical values of the emission limits also. So therefore, direct comparison between standards in different countries is generally not possible. Okay. Now here you can see this is the vehicle. It is under the emission test, and the chassis dynamometer facility is there. And I'm not going to the detail of this because it is actually the complete regulation. It is a big means many pages are there. So if you are interested to know the all facilities in detail, you can refer that. Now coming to the units of emission limits, the two types of emission limits are specified in the standards. First is for the light and medium duty vehicles, passenger cars, and 2 and 3 wheelers are in terms of mass of pollutant emitted per unit distance travel, that is gram per kilometer or gram per mile in the USA. So the relationship will be 1 gram per kilometer is equal to 1.61 gram per mile. And for heavy duty vehicles and engines, test is carried out on the engine itself, and the limits are specified in terms of mass of pollutant per unit of work done, that is gram per kilowatt hour or gram per bhp hour. And the relationship is 1 gram per kilowatt hour is equal to 1.34 gram per bhp per hour. Now this is the emission standards for passenger cars in India. You can see it in 1991 it started for the gasoline vehicles, and this is 14.3 CO, and it goes to 1 up to April 2020. Now there is no we have not received new regulations, so this will continue so far. Now here SC is initially 2, now it comes to 0.10, SC plus NOx, initially it was 3, now beyond 0.5. Then NOx is 0.06, because here they have made separate one for NOx, because NOx is actually the responsible for acid rain, and the particulate matter included here, it is 0.0045. Now coming to the diesel vehicles, it is started CO initially 17.3, and as per BS6 it is 0.50. If you see the hydrocarbon, it is 2.7. After that we have worked on the control of hydrocarbon. Then SC plus NOx, you can see it is reduced from 2 to 0.17. After that, for the NOx, you can see 0.50, 0.25, it is 0.080. Now, if you see the particulate matter, this is very important as far as diesel engine concerned. Initially, it was 0.14, then reduced to, in BS2, it is reduced to 0.08. After that, in BS3, it is 0.05. And in BS6, it is 0.0045. They put the more effort on controlling the particulate matter. So this is the tightest value. You just compare it, all the values. This is the very small value. And for achieving this, because this is very important for controlling the environmental pollution, so we have put more emphasis to control particulate matter as far as the diesel engine is concerned. Now this is the alternative emission standards for light duty diesel engines. You can see the values. It is 14 to 4, then 3.5 to 1 for NOx, 18 to 7 for PM, 0.36, then 0.15. It is shown up to BS2. Coming to the comparison between European, US and Bharat stage emissions standards for diesel passenger car, you can see BS2 is compared to Euro 2 from 1st April 2000, BS3 Euro 3 1st April 2010, then BS4 Euro 4 1st April 2017, and then then Bharat stage 6 Euro 6 April 20 with mandate proposed. Now this is US federal emission standards for passenger cars, gram per mile. This is the for the different vehicle, diesel, gasoline, Tier 1, 1981, all those things are mentioned here. And then this is the California emission standards for passenger cars. You can see this is different in the year, and these are the pollutants. So slowly they are making the pollution free type of thing, means very less emissions should come from the vehicles, because they are actually the vehicular load is very high, so they wanted to control it to the finest extent. Now I shall be focusing, because already I have discussed about NOx and why I have taken PM and the diesel particulate factor, that I have shown you through the emission standards. So I'll be concentrating my lecture on the diesel particulate filters first. So what basically the diesel particulate filter is, it is called as particulate traps, and it has been developed to filter out PM from the diesel exhaust gas to meet very stringent emission limits. Now alumina coated wire mesh, this one, ceramic fiber, porous ceramic monoliths, etc. have been studied as filtration media. So presently ceramic monolith of honeycomb type structure is used to trap the particulate matter. Here in this picture you can see the particulate matter trapped in the diesel particulate filter. You can see this, how much quantity of particulate matter was coming from the diesel engine. So presently ceramic monolith of honeycomb type structure is used to trap the particulate matter as the gas flow through its porous walls, and these filters are also termed as ceramic wall flow filters. A ceramic honeycomb type of particulate filter is shown in figure, this one, and in this cellular structure, alternate cells are plugged at one end and open at the opposite end. This is open at the opposite end. This is the porous ceramic wall. The gas will enter, then pass through the wall, and then it will leave, like that. This is from enter from here, pass through the maybe lower wall or upper wall, and then it can leave from the means exit side. So the adjacent cells are open at the downstream end from the where the filtered gas exits to the atmosphere, and flow path of gas through the walls of the filter is already shown here. Okay. Now, what are the advantages of these wall flow filters? Some advantages of wall flow filters over other filtration media are: the wall flow filters have a large filtration surface area per unit volume. The pore size of walls can be controlled to provide gas flow without excessive pressure. and the very high filtration efficiencies close to 98% are possible with acceptable pressure drop. So this is actually the advantageous one, and one should use because it is deteriorating the quality of environment, these particulate matter. So because of that, we need to install such things, and we need to go with the other filtering media also. Now, regarding the digital particulate filter material and cell density, DPF material should be chemically inert and have low thermal expansion and high melting temperature. Normally, we use porous cordyroid ceramic. The formula is 2 mgO2 Al2O3 5 SiO2. It has been commonly used for diesel particulate filter, and the melting temperature is 1460 degrees centigrade. So what is happening? The soot burns without catalyst at a temperature of 500 to 600 degrees centigrade. However, if the soot starts to burn uncontrollably, the DPF may experience temperature of 1300 degrees centigrade or higher, resulting in melting of ceramic filter. So typical temperature achieved in the ceramic filter when soot get burns are shown in the next slide. I will be showing with 100 and 200 CPSI DPF. CPSI means it is a cell per square inch, the size of the mesh. So due to lower thermal capacity of the 100 CPSI DF, the higher ceramic temperature result when soot deposit on the DPF is burned. To overcome possible meltdown due to this uncontrolled regeneration of DPF, more advanced materials withstanding even higher temperature are required. So diesel particulate filters commonly have a cell density of 100 CPSI or 200 CPSI with 0.30 to 0.45 millimeter wall thickness, and the 200 CPSI substrates provide 41% higher filtration area but have a higher pressure drop. And the filters with circular cross section are mostly used due to their superior mechanical strength and high thermal resistance, as they experience less severe temperature gradient and have more uniform temperature distribution. And the cylindrical filters are easy to pack and install on vehicles. Normally, filter size is normally equal to the swept volume of the engine, because the swept volume is showing the volume whatever is coming to the through the exhaust. So this picture shows the maximum temperature attained during controlled combustion of in particulate filter of 144 millimeter dia to 150 millimeter length and 100 and 200 CPSI cordyroid substrates. 200 CPSI substrate had a higher mass, hence lower peak temperature. You can see this one. If 100 CPSI will be there, then the substrate mass will be lower. When the substrate mass will be more, in that case the temperature of the filter will become high. But if the mass will be more, like 200 CPSI, just double of this, you are finding that the temperature range is falling. So in this case, the life of the filter will be more in this case. Now, if we talk about pore size and soot holding capacity, for good mechanical strength, wall porosity is capped about 48 to 50%. Pore size range from 12 to 35 micrometer, and pore size of about 35 micrometer gives filtration efficiency of 60 to 75%, and 20 to 25 micrometer pore size filters are used for 80 to 90% efficiency, and 12 to 14 micrometer pore size of efficiency greater than 90%. Now this size is actually depends, actually it decide about the cost. If you will go with the finer size, it will be more costly. If you go with the pore size, it will be, you need to compromise with the efficiency if you are going with the pore size. Now with higher pore size, filtration efficiency as well as pressure drop is low, and hence optimization of pore size, cell density and wall thickness is essential. You just see that if the higher pore size filtration efficiency you want, the pressure drop is low. So optimization of pore size, cell density and wall thickness is always taken into consideration. The soot loading before regeneration ranges 5 to 10 gram per liter volume of substrate. So when a 10 to 20 micrometer pore size DPF was loaded with a soot in the range of 5 to 10 grams per liter of substrate volume, pressure drop was 7 kilopascal and 11 kilopascal with 5 and 10 gram per liter soot loading respectively. Now you can see this is actually the selection, which one you want to use. Now after that we will talk about the regeneration of DPF, because once it is collecting the particulate matter, then we want that our particulate our DPF should be just neat and clean for further processing. So it is relatively easy to filter and collect the particulate matter in the trap, but the soot is to be burned in C2, that is regenerate the trap so that pressure drop across the filter is kept always at an acceptable level. Now soot and other particulate get collected on the filter that through improves the filtration efficiency, but it results in an increased pressure drop across the filter. The pressure loss in the new and clean filter is about 70 millimeter of water for the 0.1 meter per second gas velocity in filter channels. So design considerations limit soot loading to about 10 gram per liter of filter volume before filter should be cleaned or regenerated. This is very important. Otherwise, what will happen that suddenly that too much loss of pressure will be there. So that is to be avoided in order to have the backflow. So in this case, design consideration limits soot loading to about 10 gram. This much we have to think on it. And if you are and timely, you need to get it cleared so that the functioning will be proper. And as the soot is collected up to the limit of 10 gram per liter, pressure drop increases to 300 to 350 millimeter of water, whereas for the clean water it was 70 millimeter of water. An increase of engine back pressure by 350 millimeter of water results in 1% loss in fuel economy at 65 kilometer per hour vehicle speed. So for engine out PM emissions of about 0.25 and 0.25 to 0.33 gram per kilowatt hour, and engine power output of about 17 kilowatt liter swept volume, 10 gram per liter soot would get collected on DPF in about 2 hours. So hence the DPF regeneration should take place approximately every 2 hours. The soot in the filter is to be burned in situ. So burning of soot particles begins at about 540 degrees centigrade, and such high exhaust gas temperature do not occur during engine operation for sufficiently long periods of time. So the diesel exhaust temperature in the exhaust pipe typically reach to about 300 degrees centigrade only. So to get this temperature, we need to have some heating device there. So for regeneration of DPF, therefore additional measures are to be adopted. So this is the regeneration, and there are the two types of regeneration system. And actually regeneration of DPF to its original clean state has been a challenging task. And so because of that, two types of regeneration system have been investigated, and the few developed for employment on production vehicles. One is called active regeneration, another is called passive. In case of active DPF regeneration, the positive source of heat is employed to raise temperature of DPF to about 540 degrees centigrade. When oxidation of soot starts, the exothermic reaction sustains the combustion of soot particles and the DPF is regenerated. In the active regeneration system, sensors are used to monitor pressure drop across the trap, and on receiving the signal from the sensor, the exhaust gas temperature is increased above 500 degrees centigrade by any one of the following technique. So you can do engine throttling, you can use electric heater upstream of filter, and you can use the burner upstream of filter. These three things can be added for changing the temperature of DPF from 300 to 540 degrees centigrade, because it is coming to 300 but we need 540 to burn the soot. Now the first method I am discussing, that is engine throttling. So throttling of air reduces airflow, that results in decrease of overall air-fuel ratio, which increases the combustion and exhaust temperatures. However, engine throttling increases the engine pumping losses, which result in loss of fuel efficiency. Now, throttling also increases engine concentration in the exhaust, and for oxidation of soot, 2 to 5% oxygen in the exhaust is necessary. Hence, the extent of throttling is to be controlled. Under normal cruising condition, throttling is unable to increase the exhaust temperature to the levels needed for regeneration. When throttling can work only at high loads, which is deliberately applied to raise the temperatures, it also increases hydrocarbon, carbon monoxide, and smoke emissions. Engine throttling as a means of trap regeneration, therefore, has had only a limited success. And for electric filter regeneration, power to the electric heater is supplied by the engine alternator. A typical truck DPF regeneration system may require a 3 kilowatt heater for the heavy duty. And for the low duty means light duty, middle duty, you will get means a 2 kilowatt or 1.5 kilowatt heater will work. So the electric generation hence needs a high battery backup, or is to be done while the vehicle is in garage, which may not be accepted by the operators as regeneration is required quite frequently. So this is our limitation. And coming to the burner regeneration, you can see the diesel fuel burner is placed in the exhaust in front of the filter to regenerate the diesel particulate filter. This system can perform at all engine loads and all engine speeds and loads. And there are the two type of systems are used for burner regeneration. First is the burner full flow system, and another is the burner bypass system. So in the full flow system, the total exhaust gas is to be heated to about 540 degrees centigrade, and the large air pump for the burner and high burner fuel consumption are needed. Now, for complex electronic controls to regulate burner fuel flow to maintain safe levels of gas temperature at inlet of the filter are important. So in the bypass system, only a small part of exhaust is allowed to flow through the filter when regeneration is carried out, and the smaller air pump is required for it. So here you can see the diesel fuel burner bypass regeneration system for diesel particulate gas. So the bypass burner regeneration system is shown here, and the regeneration process is basically independent of engine operating conditions. What are the engine operating conditions here? Maybe inlet pressure, temperature, all whatever the compression ratio, everything, whatever you are providing at the whatever is required for operating the engine is actually the engine operating conditions. So those things are actually not affecting this regeneration process, as the filter during regeneration is isolated from the engine exhaust. So the fuel consumption by the burner to heat the inlet face of the filter to 540 degrees centigrade is an order of magnitude lower compared to the fuel flow system. The relative magnitudes of energy required to raise the exhaust temperature to 540 degrees centigrade in the flow and bypass type of burner regeneration system. Here it is 10% of total flow are presented, and for a 5.7 liter diesel engine, the inlet face with heated to 540 degrees centigrade soot oxidation begins. Increase in temperature of the gas accelerates combustion of combustion of soot further, and the burning process progresses from the front and oxidizes soot in the remainder of the filter. This is the diesel engine, air blower, atomizing and air purge. This is the solenoid valve. This point is the burner. This is actually raising the temperature. This is the monolith, and this is the tap, and this is the muffler, and this goes to the exhaust. So this is actually the bypass one, because you are taking the bypass of some from here, and the collection is done. Now coming to the control of active regeneration, you can see the active regeneration is actually carried out once the filter is plugged, and when the pressure drop across the filter increases to the threshold level, the entire filter is plugged with soot. The regeneration process starts at the front end and progresses towards the downstream. So once the regeneration starts, heat released further heats up the filter, and soot burns at a progressively increasing rate. This may lead to uncontrolled rate of soot burning and high rates of heat release. Eventually, it may melt the filter substrate. Whatever material you are selecting, that may get melted. So therefore, the filter temperatures are to be monitored continuously. And to control these temperatures during regeneration, the burner may be shut off midway through the regeneration cycle to prevent melting of the filter substrate. So the DOF generation is thus a carefully controlled process. Here you cannot just increase the temperature, because when the soot starts burning, it is actually exothermic reaction. So the temperature will also increase. So looking to this figure, with the vehicle speed, it is the graph is plotted. Here it is showing the heating energy. As the heating energy increases for the 100% exhaust flow, you can see this one. As the vehicle speed increases, the heating also energy also increases. But for 10% exhaust flow, means partial flow, you are finding that this heating energy is very less. Okay, so this is actually showing the energy required to heat exhaust gas to 540 degrees centigrade for full flow, and this is for bypass diesel particulate filter regeneration system. So you can understand how much difference it is. Okay. So by this way, for the bypass, you can control the you can save the life of the substrate of the DPF. That will be the more beneficial point. Now coming to the passive catalytic regeneration, you can see these are the active regeneration systems. It needs complex control systems and are expensive. And the passive regeneration systems employ catalysts to reduce soot oxidation temperatures to the level lie within the normal exhaust gas temperature range. And the catalyst is either added to diesel fuel in the form of additives, or it is impregnated on the surface of the filter substrate. And another approach for passive regeneration uses a special oxidation catalyst in front of the ceramic wall flow particulate filter to promote soot oxidation, and this is known as continuously regenerating trap. So it is CRT. So once again, I am repeating, the active regeneration system need always complex control system and are expensive. And the passive is actually employing catalyst to reduce soot oxidation temperature to the levels that lie within the normal exhaust temperature range. So this passive regeneration system is safe, and the catalyst is either you can add in the diesel fuel or in the form of additive, or is impregnated on the surface of the filter substrate. So if you add in the diesel, then there will be some other effect on the performance also. So it is better to use it on the to impregnate it on the surface of the filter substrate. Another approach for passive regeneration uses a special oxidation catalyst in front of the ceramic wall flow particulate filter to promote soot oxidation. So this is known as continuously regenerating trap. Okay, so now I'll be talking about regeneration biofuel additives. Okay, so several fuel additives based on iron, cerium, manganese, zinc, copper, and lead. It will lower the soot oxidation temperature. Cerium and copper-based additives in 60 to 100 ppm concentration have been found very effective in lowering soot ignition temperature to about 300 degrees centigrade, and soot regeneration has been achieved at temperatures below 400 degrees centigrade. Now, the additives on oxidation produce metal oxides which promote oxidation of soot. Now, for example, cerium fuel additive is converted to cerium oxide on combustion, and on reaching the DPF, it catalyzes soot oxidation. It catalyzes soot oxidation, and the oxidation mechanism is like this. If you are using this CE, that is cerium, so what will happen? The oxidation of soot, it will become CeO2. When it will react with the carbon of the soot, it will give you Ce2O3 plus CO. And then oxidation of CO means CO plus half O2, it is CO2. So CO2 will be formed. So CO2O3 being an unstable compound gets converted back to CO2. We have given CO2 here, and then it's CO2 we are getting again back. So CO2O3 being an unstable compound gets converted back to CO2 in the exhaust gas as excess oxygen is available. So this Ce2O3 plus half O2 will become CO2. So this is basically the partial reaction. If you will add it, then what will happen? This oxygen, 2 oxygen, you just simplify it, you will get C plus O2 is equal to CO2 will remain. All will be cancelled out. Okay, so this is when it is remaining same before and after the reaction, then it is used as the catalyst. So these reactions are quite fast and are completed within 2 to 6 seconds once the temperature is sufficiently high. The fuel additive based approach for particulate trap regeneration is considered quite promising, and the additive can be dosed into the fuel line when required by automatic dosing equipment on board of the vehicle. You have to dose it or inject it there. Now, coming to the continuously regenerating trap system, the principle of CRT is based on the fact that NO2 is a much superior oxidizing agent for soot than the molecular oxygen. It is to oxygen 300 degrees centigrade oxidizes the dry carbon soot trapped in the filter below 300 degrees centigrade by this reaction. This nitrogen oxide plus carbon, it is giving you CO2 plus NO, and this NO2 gives you means if it is impartial, it is partial, then it will give you CO plus NO. So although the trap substrate can be coated with a catalyst material to reduce soot oxidation temperature to as low as 200 degrees centigrade, but installation of an oxidation catalyst upstream of particulate filter, where NO is preferentially converted to nitrogen peroxide, which then oxidizes the soot, has been found more effective. So the catalysts used are noble metals. This is costly, these noble metals are. And the oxidation catalyst is a flow through ceramic monolith using platinum palladium catalyst impregnated on alumina wash coat. And the diagram I am showing on the next slide. So NO2 is produced by oxidation of NO upstream of DPF, and the soot trapped in the downstream DPF is continuously oxidized on the filter substrate by NO2, thus keeping the particulate filter essentially clean, and the exhaust back pressure remains nearly unchanged. This is the plus point, that we don't want exhaust back pressure very low, otherwise there will be the backflow. Okay, see, this is the diagram of the continuously regenerating trap. You can see in the exhaust gas comes here. The NO will, whatever the oxygen is available, NO will react with oxygen. In the presence of these catalysts, it will give you NO2, and after this NO2, this will be react with the this carbon, and carbon will burn, basically taking this oxygen, and this will go as the CO2. This is the soot. The black one is actually dry soot particles, and this is actually the oxidation catalyst. This is the diesel particulate wall flow filter. You can see this, and by this way it can be controlled. So this is about the continuously regenerating trap, CRT. Now after that, the fuel sulfur. Normally we consider the sulfur as the notorious element for the engine performance, but one thing I have found in case of diesel engine, that the fuel sulfur is an important factor that affects conversion of NO to NO2 on the oxidation catalyst, and hence the efficiency of CRT also. So fuel sulfur lower than 30 ppm has been found necessary to maintain the functioning of CRT. Now this value you keep in your mind, that the 30 ppm, it should not be more than 30, otherwise there will be another emission, you will find that the sulfur dioxide. So we want to reduce it to 30, and this 30 is very necessary to maintain the functioning of CRT at an acceptable level. In Europe, where low sulfur fuel is available, several thousand vehicles with CRT are in operation. To achieve the best performance of CRT, these conditions to be met, sulfur-free fuel, means sulfur should be less than 30 ppm, is necessary to prevent catalyst poisoning. And for best performance, temperatures should be in the range of 250 to 450 degrees centigrade, and the NOx soot ratio should be adequately high, otherwise NO2 available will be too low to oxidize the soot. This ratio is important. NOx to soot ratio should be adequately high, otherwise NO2 means if it will not be high, then the soot will be more, so NOx will be less for means oxidizing the soot. After that, we'll talk about partial diesel particulate filters. So normally, although wall flow diesel particulate filters have very high particulate trapping efficiency, but their regeneration over the entire lifespan, extending up to 496,000 kilometers for heavy duty vehicles, in a challenging problem. So normally in Europe, many diesel vehicles meeting Euro 4 standards are fitted with wall flow particulate filters as original equipment. And metal separated flow through diesel filters employing CRT operational principles. This has been developed recently, and these filters have been developed to provide 50 to 70% reduction in PM emissions, and therefore are called partial particulate filters, like CRT upstream in the first section. An oxidation catalyst is installed where NO is oxidized to NO2. So in the second section, which consists of flow through pipe filter element collection of a soot and its combustion process occur. The figure I have already shown you here. This is actually the part. First the oxidation will be there, and of NO in NO2, and then oxidation of soot from C to CO2. So this is actually the preferred one, the metal supported flow through diesel filters. And now we'll talk about the working principle of metal supported this filter. This is the diagram, this schematic cutaway section and working principle of the filter is shown here. The metal particulate matter filter consists of flat and corrugated foils in a flow through monoliths configuration, and the corrugated foils are stamped to produce blended like structure to direct the flow towards the flat foil. And this flat foil is made of porous sintered metal fleece or wool packed in the form of a sheet and compressed between the metal foils. So part of the exhaust gas is directed to the blades in the corrugated foils towards the porous metal wool that traps the particulate matter. Okay, the wool will be there, so that traps the particulate matter, and the soot trapped by metal wool is oxidized by NO2 generated on the catalyst in the upstream first section. The design of this diesel particulate filter has open channels and it does not get clogged due to excessive accumulation of soot as happens in the wall flow. Filters on failure of regeneration, all the exhaust is able to flow through the open channels if the metal fleece is choked. However, in such a situation, removal of PM from exhaust gas does not take place, and typical cell density of this filter is 200 CPCI. And with the use of these particulate filters, reduction in PM emissions ranging from 30 to 70% have been obtained. So this is the sintered metal fleece material soot particles. You can see it. This is the sectional view of that. And as far as the summary of diesel engine emission control is concerned, you can see the from this picture it will be clear that development in diesel engine emission control technology the development in diesel engine emission control technology have taken place over several decades are summarized in this figure. You can see here the developments have been directed towards advancement in technology to control engine out emissions and exhaust after treatment. Now, so this is actually the this engine out emissions. You can see this. This is the initially engine, then turbo VGT. After that, the fuel research on fuel, then the high pressure injection soil combustion, then EGR. So like that, Euro 1, Euro 2, 3, 4, 5, like this. This is actually reducing the particulate matter. And after treatment, this modification has been done in the engine. And after treatment, we were having the SCR, then DeNOx catalyst, and then the oxidation catalyst, then the CRT. So it is from Euro 4 to Euro 5. These changes we are showing here. So these are actually showing the advancement of the in the diesel engine emission control. Now coming to the summary of advancement further. As seen from the figure, the engine technologies have been able to reduce emission to Euro 4 emission levels. The technologies employed progressively included turbocharging with intercooling and variable geometry turbocharging, and improved fuels, especially low sulfur, in addition to low final boiling point and low closure control on density, viscosity, etc. So high injection pressure, optimization of combustion bowl geometry and air motion, and EGR. These are actually the three factors this has been included in the engine for the emission control. Now, in case of after treatment technology for Euro 5 and beyond, the second stage is the exhaust after treatment. In some engine models, even to meet Euro 4 standards, diesel oxidation catalyst and SCR, DeNOx catalyst were employed. And however, for Euro 5 and later standards, some form of exhaust treatment is also essential. And most engines would employ diesel particulate filters, that is DPF or CRT, and DeNOx catalyst, that is SCR or other types. And this is all the references what I have used. So basically I am using this nptel.ac.in, the engine combustion by Pundir, this Ganeshan, then the Gill and the Smith book, and Hisler, Haywood also. So these are my list of references, and thank you for the listening by this lecture. Thank you very much. Any doubt if you have, then you can discuss.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello, participants. You can ask if you have any doubt. Hello.
Yes, participants, if you have any queries, please you can ask. So madam is ready to answer.
Madam, I have a question.
Yeah.
There is a passive and active regeneration system. So that that if the passive system is so much better, then why
Yeah.
we are going? Also, these alternatives practically going for that passive only. No, means
Yes.
anyone should go with passive system only.
Yeah.
There are so many alternatives, but the passive one is the best.
Various actually, see what is happening actually. Engine we are not designing. We are seeing from the After Effects angle. So the it is actually the passive one is I am giving you that the example only, that the passive is actually in case of active regeneration system, it needs the complex control system, and which is very expensive. And for passive,
Oh.
what is happening that you are using catalyst to reduce the soot oxidation. So there will be no difficulty with that, and that can be handled, and there without any proper control system. If you are putting catalyst impregnated there, then there is no problem, because already I have
Oh.
shown you the figure here. You can see
Yeah.
this. This is
Yeah.
impregnated. So that will be better.
Yeah.
With
Mhm.
active really controlling, it is actually uncontrolled combustion. So for controlling that, actually you need again the maybe means some modern system you can use so that this can be saved out. So we want actually our this filter should also not melt. So because
Yeah.
of that, I prefer this passive one.
Yeah. So initial investment is higher,
Yes,
but that
initial may be
model.
slightly higher, but
Yeah.
long life and the means operating cost will be less.
Yeah. So it will be beneficial. Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Okay.
Any other query from participants? Okay, thank you, madam. Thank you very much for joining with us in this session, also for taking the session. Madam has taken 2 sessions. Actually, FDP has begin with the madam's session only on alternate fuels, and today madam has taken on applying emission norms and judging appropriate diesel particulate filters. So I hope you have all understood the session. So thank you, madam. Thank you once again on behalf of Christian Engineering College of Technology. I would like to thank you, and thank you for accepting our invitation. So thank you very much, madam, and thank you all the participants also for joining this session. Again, we are going to today there will be 3rd session, that will be from 3 to 4:30 on recent trends and innovations in engineering, different alternate fuels and emission and their norms again. So very expert Dr. Ravi Kumar sir is going to take that session. So it will start at 3 o'clock. So and tomorrow